Welcome to the Rebel Leader Podcast, Shattering the Status Quo, hosted by Dr. Joshua Ducharme, a leader with over 20 years of experience in education. Each episode features real-life stories from visionary leaders who defied the status quo. So, if you're ready to become a rebel leader and shatter the status quo in education, let's dive in.
Hey, are you looking to scale your business from 5 figures to 6 figures or 6 figures to 7 figures? If you are, I have the perfect thing for you. What I want you to do today is I want you to go download a book. This book is going to take you through my 3-pillar system. It's 100% free. All you have to do is go to growfast.cash. I say again, go to growfast.cash and you're going to be able to download my free international best-selling book, which is called Be Good, Be Brief, Be Gone. You can take that book. It's going to help you scale your business to the next level. Again, go download it. Be good, be brief, be gone. Growfast.cash. I say again, growfast.cash. Enjoy.
Welcome to the Rebel Leader Shattering the Status Quo podcast, where we bring you the real stories of educational leaders who are rewriting the rules, challenging the status quo, and making waves in their schools and communities. I'm Dr. Joshua Ducharme, and every episode we explore the bold moves that are reshaping education. They're defying traditional boundaries, delivering results that matter. From tracking literacy challenges to reimagining student engagement, our guests are leaders who refuse to accept business as usual. If you're ready to lead change and make a lasting impact, you found your tribe. So let's get started, because education, let's be honest, needs rebels. Today's show is incredible. We have an amazing guest, and I want to talk a little bit about something that is plaguing our state and as well our nation, and that is the gap in literacy. So we know that literacy is the foundation of all learning, but today schools across the nation, we are facing a crisis. It's an epidemic, really, of literacy gaps that are leaving too many students too far behind. From early childhood all the way up to high school, students, they're struggling. They're struggling to develop those reading skills that they need to thrive in life and also in learning. And the consequences of that obviously are far-reaching, widening achieving gaps, decreasing graduation rates, long-term limitations on students' futures. It's endless. And so we have to do something about that. So I'm excited today to have a guest, Dr. Douglas Fisher. And he is somebody who has been at the forefront of all of this. And so the question we have to ask ourselves with this as we dive in is, what bold moves are necessary to turn this around? And today we're going to sit with Dr. Fisher here and discuss those very things. Dr. Fisher, welcome to the show.
Welcome. Thank you. Thanks for the invitation.
I appreciate you doing this. And again, your work around literacy has really, really changed a lot of things in our demographic here in Southern California, but across the nation. So tell us a little bit about what you have been doing over the last few years and how that pertains to maybe some of our listeners who are listening, who are leaders in their school districts and or leaders as teachers, how literacy is so important and what some of those bold moves that they can do to kind of make some of those changes.
Yes, and literacy is important. We talk about it being one of the gatekeepers to all other content, that our human brain does a lot of reading, writing, speaking, and listening. That's how we learn things. It's probably our operating system. I think when I reflect back, I made an argument way back, 97, 98, that we needed some school-wide approaches. We needed to build some instructional consistency, not to constrain teachers, but to provide students with some opportunities to experience high-quality literacy multiple times during the day. At that time, I kind of took a strategy approach, like, let's all use some strategies. And I argued that if we had some consistent strategies, then students wouldn't spend their minutes trying to figure out what the teacher wanted from them. They would spend their minutes on the content, the learning. And so we did great things in achievement. We really saw some gains. Then I started thinking about what would be more of these categories of instructional moves, because way back then I wrote articles about strategies. Like these 7 strategies seem to work across, the 99, 2000, 2001. Then I started thinking more about categories of moves. And out of respect for one of my mentors, David Pearson, and his colleagues, we named it Gradual Release of Responsibility. Back in the 90s, late 90s, it wasn't popular. It was an older theory, but it wasn't popular at the time. And so my colleague Nancy and I said, could we adopt or adapt this model to make it more generic and not specifically and only for reading comprehension, but overall teaching? We added collaboration as a phase in our model of gradual release, which has now become dominant. I mean, gradual release of responsibility is a major conversation we have. And so I think we resuscitated, like CPR, an idea that was out there, and adapted and adopted it so that teachers would have an instructional framework that still had to work in their grade level and content. I think one of the challenges we put to the field was that every lesson needed to include student-to-student interaction using academic language. And we've been saying that and saying that. I recognize it's hard. I know students will talk to each other, but not always about things we want them to talk about. However, when we see breakthroughs, it is because kids know what they're learning and they have some time to consolidate in the presence of peers. Of course, they need good teacher input. They need some small group instruction. But that was kind of like the aha moment, is how do we build an instructional framework that has maybe hundreds of strategies that teachers could choose from to help them say, there will be consistency. You will have input every day. You will have collaboration every day. You will have practice. But that is an expectation that you, as a learner, whether it's 4th grade and it's your language arts time, your history time, your science time, there's some consistency. Or if you're a high school student, there's some consistency.
Yeah, I mean, the gradual release of responsibility is something that is, in today's day and age, not necessarily groundbreaking because it is very common practice. But back in the early 2000s and the late 1990s, certainly was something that was like, you are out of your mind, right? You are going to give students responsibility to talk about academic things? Yeah, right. And so back in those days, that would have been a bold move. And so I guess the question would be, so in today's day and age, as we have this sort of concept of gradual release of responsibility, how do we get, as a leader, how do we get teachers to come on board with understanding that this could be very powerful in creating student engagement and conversations and potentially help to close some of those gaps using some of that academic language?
Yeah, you make a good point. I think I'll start with input. And I don't think my interpretation of gradual release is that these phases can go in any order. And I get misquoted all the time that it has to be this linear process where you always start with what we called focused lesson and go guided, collaborative, independent. It can go in any order. But I think right now in the world of literacy, we are pushing for small group instruction. And I worry that we're going to compromise really good whole class instruction in an effort to get to as much small group instruction as we can. I believe, and I think the evidence is pretty clear on this, there are students who need small group instruction for acceleration and to address things that they still need to learn, unfinished learning. But if we try to teach everything in small group, we will run out of time. We have to make sure that what we call the input part of a lesson, the new learning, that we get students' attention, we get them to engage, and then we have some high quality experiences. Now that input could be direct instruction, it could be a worked example, it could be think aloud, it could be a read aloud, a shared reading. We have so many options, but it has to be good. So we're now changing our language to a micro learning because we wanted the word micro there so that people know it's not a half an hour, 45 minutes an hour. It's micro. And you might need to have that input, that micro learning, multiple times in a lesson. So I want to argue that input, the new learning, is super important. And we need to dial down a little bit the pressure for all small group, all small group, all small group. I do want some small group instruction. If the rest of the class is working collaboratively, it's easier to do some small group instruction. If the rest of the class is doing independent work, that's only going to last for a certain number of minutes before it becomes below grade level practice. And so I think there's all kinds of decisions and dynamics here regarding that.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to that as an experienced small group instructor, where when we did some centers rotations and I had some literacy groups that were kind of leveled reading groups, I always found it very challenging. It was one of my greatest challenges. I've been in this business for a long time. It was one of my greatest challenges. And I honestly, to this day, still have not found a solid way to keep other students engaged in grade level work in what I want them to be able to produce while I'm meeting with small groups. So I love the idea of micro learning, and maybe we can talk a little bit more and dive into that just a tad bit more. But immediately what popped out to me was our current day and age, these kids and us as well are fed in these little 30-second snippets of information and entertainment. And I found myself as an educator that I don't want to say I had to succumb to that, but I did find myself to be this person that always had to constantly be in this dopamine sort of environment where I was constantly dealing. And I actually wrote a paper about this called Being the Dopamine Dealer. And it was really an interesting concept, but it was about taking the same ideas and concepts of engaging users on a social media side of things, but doing that in a classroom setting, which turned some heads for sure. I mean, it was really interesting, the response I got when I talked about how you can take some of your classroom instruction and rework it to kind of build within that framework. But I do like the idea of what's called micro learning. Can you talk a little bit more about that and how teachers and leaders might be able to, implement something like that?
Sure. So I appreciate your comment about who our students are. We don't get to change the fact that that's their society in which they're growing up. We don't get to change the fact that the pressure around is high energy, short bursts of information. We don't get to change that. That is. We can lament it when I was back in the day, but we can't change it. So if we want to invite students into learning, especially deeper learning, we have to respond to their reality. And students want to experience success. They want to experience connections and micro learning. When we break it apart, and the research on chunking is relevant here. How do we break it apart into something where students can have a cognitive apprenticeship to a piece of the learning and then consolidate and apply, and then come back to some new micro learning? So saying we're going to do an hour-long lesson is really hard for me now. How many different micro learning pieces will you do? 5 minutes, 8 minutes. How will students consolidate with their peers? And then where will they practice and apply? So since we're visual, I'll show you one of the things I like to do. This is a plain piece of paper. I fold it into quadrants. I then fold a triangle down in the middle. So now I have 4 quadrants with a rhombus in the middle, as you can see there. Now I could draw the lines in around it. So students are working away from me. Let's say they have a short reading. I've just done a micro learning, let's say about tone or mood. So I gave you a piece of text, and you're going to find the words and phrases that contribute to the tone or the mood or whatever we're working on. I just made that up right out there. So you're by yourself, but in a group. Your notes go in this quadrant. That's an independent task. And then we move to a collaborative task where each person in your group shares their thinking and you record some notes. And you're talking to each other. And then at the very end, you write your own summary in the rhombus in the middle. Rapid formative assessment. Teacher collects this. Really, you only have to look at the summary. Do they get it? Is the summary different from other people? But I just kept you engaged with application and conversation. Maybe that took you 8 or 9 minutes to do that after my micro learning about tone and mood. I'm walking around the room. Now, at that time, I could go grab 3 students who are really having a hard time with this and meet with them. Or I could grab 5 students who need acceleration. They already know mood and tone. Because I have the rest of the class doing something that is directly related to the application of my micro learning. So they come back to the same text. And I say, here's another micro learning we're going to do. We're also going to look at transitions. How does this author transition between ideas? Turn the paper over, do the same thing with transitions. So I'm thinking we're trying to teach too much at once. Too much, too fast, won't last. And that's the reality. I can't change the reality.
Looking to grow your business beyond 5 figures, 6 figures, 7 figures plus, what I want you to do is go download this book. The title is called Be Good, Be Brief, Be Gone. It will help you grow your business past 5, 6, and 7 figure. Go download the book today, growfast.cash. I say again, growfast.cash, and download the book for absolutely free.
I understand that. And I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, I always found myself that I always said, if I'm bored, the kids are 10 times bored, right? And if I'm speaking monotonously for 30 minutes or more, it's too much. Even adults can't handle that type of constant talk. You know, they tune out. They think about other things. And kids are at an attention span that are even less than that. You know, you add elementary to the mix. I think the stats are something in regards to something about 5 minutes of actual cognitive understanding of what you're saying before their mind drifts to something else. And then adolescence, it's maybe 10 to 12. Right. So, you know, and that research has been done for years. It's not like it's been something that's this brand new thing of development. So, you know, for teachers to take an approach and speak for 30 minutes to an hour straight, I don't know that any engagement is going to happen and or any type of closing the gap of whatever content you're trying to get across. So I love the idea of that micro learning. And also too, what kind of popped out to me when you did that sort of that intro of the content about tone, and then you added in that layer of kinesthetic learning. So you're adding in those multiple modalities for kids that need that brain, you know, break, so to speak, from the content that's being delivered. So love that idea. Certainly something so simple as just folding paper and then getting the content across, changing the tone of what you're trying to do, and getting those micro learning sessions in. Fantastic. Love that. I'm sure at a PD of some sort, I'm sure teachers would be eating that stuff up. So that's fantastic for all of our listeners that are wanting to add in some layers of that. And that's an easy and quick process that can be done. So I'd like to talk a little bit about maybe some opposition, because being a leader in a school and sometimes having certain ideas about where we are in education and where we think we might need to be, or some things that potentially could change the status quo, are sometimes very, very head turning for people, and things sometimes stop you dead in your tracks. And I've always been somebody that's pushed the boundaries when it comes to certain things. And, you know, it's gotten me in trouble a few times here or there with district leaders and or parents that maybe don't necessarily agree with what I'm trying to do. So have there ever been any moments in your career, future or even past, that maybe you had this idea of what you thought would be amazing in terms of closing some of those gaps or putting in a new program, where you faced opposition and you had to be that rebel leader and you saw a tremendous outcome because of that choice that you made?
I think I'll go way back to Gradual Release. That was controversial when we did it. And I went to the school board and got the school board policy approved, saying this is our instructional framework. So that was, but you know, now I would say, as you noted, that's not a big thing anymore. When I now say I want 50% of the minutes on average in collaborative learning, people freak out. And they're like, how do I get kids to work and talk, and what they won't talk? And so I said, it's an average. I mean, there are times where you do other things, but how do we get more? We know that teachers talk about 80% of the minutes. We know that. There's strong evidence. They ask about 150 questions they already know the answers to every day. And we know the evidence. How do we change that? And I get a lot of pushback about how many minutes, how will I cover everything? Well, covering is different than learning. So I think that is a challenge and some pushback. The other one that I'm getting right now, Nancy and I have argued there is no such thing as a formative assessment. And I hear this a lot. Like, what do you mean? It's not the nature of the assessment to be formative. And we've created this false dichotomy in our profession of this is formative and this is summative. It's just not true. There are better uses of assessment evidence and not great uses, but you could formatively and summatively use any bit of evidence that you have. And so when we say it's formative, it can't be in the grade book, it's only for this, or it's summative and you're not going to do anything else with it, it's causing this really weird dichotomy in our profession that's unnecessary. And so I've been pushing on that lately and raising eyebrows. Why are you saying this? You know, this is a formative assessment. It does not go in the grade book. So that's a current one that I think we're all pushing back on and arguing about. My small group conversation gets some reaction from people because in literacy, especially in elementary school, there is tremendous pressure to meet with small group. And I understand some of the rationale for that. However, I want to make sure we're doing some really good whole class instruction that's not, like you said, 40 minutes long, talking to kindergartners or fifth graders for that matter.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there's several things when you kind of try to push on the profession and recognizing that we say and we explain why and what's the best evidence. And I think our profession is very much status quo. I like it. I like things. I'm at a high school right now. I like it when things are smooth. I like it when but we have to go to the next level. We have to say what's next for these students. I said in 2007, I created a school schedule that had students taking their academic classes 4 days a week. And on their fifth day, with different grade levels, different days, they would have an internship and be off campus. And everyone said, your test scores will be terrible. Kids cannot learn the content in 4 days a week. And right now we have among the highest college and career indicator in the region because our students have internships and college opportunities while they're in high school. And they're seeing the value because their college faculty say, you got to know this and you got to know this. So they go back to their math class or their English language arts class and they see the value in what we're trying to teach them.
That's 100% correct. I mean, I have been screaming this for years that in the high school systems, we need some type of actual internship or partnership with companies or even schools, you know, where students that are interested, and we're starting to see a little bit of this, you know, in the last few, I would say the last 5 or 6 years with the pathway programs that a lot of the high schools have started to adopt. But a pathway is only as good as an internship that you get with a company, right? So if somebody really wants to go into graphic design, okay, well, a pathway to that, the teacher teaching you those things, that's great. But really that real world experience is where the students are going to get all that they need to learn. I tell you what, I think back to when I was in high school and I started to get into video editing and YouTube wasn't a thing.
Right.
You know, it wasn't like you could just go on. No, like you couldn't just go on and like learn how to do this stuff by somebody creating a video for you. So I took the effort to learn how to do those things as a high school student. But had I had an opportunity to maybe work in a marketing company or something where they could have taught me face to face, and like you mentioned, collaborative learning, because that's where real learning is going to happen. What do kids always do when they need to learn things? They ask their parents. Their parents, a collaborative conversation, and guess what? They learn. So I see the true value in that collaborative conversation. It's just getting it to a point where students are having that academic language conversation and not talking about, you know, the latest and greatest thing that happened on TikTok. But I wholeheartedly agree with you that internship and that connectivity to the real world helps to bring in the value of what they're learning in those 4 days in academic. Fantastic. And that's a bold move. That is a bold move as a leader. So I commend you on that. And I assume that that's still going on.
It is. Started in 2007. We're still doing internships every week for every kid.
Amazing. So
it's a lot of effort and work.
I was going to say, how many internships do you have, you know, in the region?
We have 545 kids and we have 545 internships.
That is so much to manage. Wow. Incredible.
And some will say, well, if we had 2,000 kids, well, yes, your staff would be 4 times the size. So yes, you can, I mean, so Yeah, I don't want to downplay how difficult it is. And yeah, young people make mistakes. Sometimes they do dumb things in their internship, but we're here to safeguard them. We're there to put procedures and policies in place to protect them and the workplaces they go, but they go all over the county. We have a fire technology program, we have an education program, we have a healthcare program, we have a mental health program, we have a childcare program. I mean, these kids are all over the county based on their interests, and getting college credit and application, as you said, like your example of graphic design. Yes, I need to learn the technical aspects, but the world of work is different.
Very.
It is highly collaborative, and people are critics. They're not just mean. They're saying, this could be better. This is where you improve it. Let's have a session. Let's bring it together. Let's workshop it. That's the world of work.
Yep.
When young people experience, I mean, like a lot of we have about maybe a third of the kids are in healthcare. They go watch real people working with real patients every week. And depending on the day of the week, they go. And they interact with human beings at some of their worst moments in a crisis of healthcare. And the compassion, the empathy that they learn, the soft skills, as they call them often, of interaction, of reaching your hand out and shaking it and meeting someone, of giving people dignity when they're very ill. I mean, these are life-changing skills. And they say, wow, it's not just taking blood pressures and reporting to the physician.
Yeah.
It's a whole range of things that I have to learn to be good at this job.
100%. Absolutely. You know, I think back to our teaching credential programs, and honestly, not much has changed.
No.
You know, we go through student teaching for 4 months, and good luck. You're in your classroom. Yeah. Good luck. You know, that doesn't teach you how to be a teacher very effectively. You know, when we look at internships, I mean, a lot of times internships are sometimes an entire year.
Right.
You know, so these things, you look at medical residencies and things like that. They are intense, long things. Now, I'm not advocating for teacher programs to be ridiculously long, but I do think that if there were an opportunity, say in high school, to get our feet wet with some of those things, I certainly think that it would give students that are becoming adults, you know, and not so less of, you know, times in high school, is that it gives them an opportunity to think, well, maybe I could do this. I am pretty good at this, you know.
Definitely. We have 25 future educators across the grade levels, 9, 10, 11, 12. And they either are assigned to a local elementary school or a high school nearby. And they all talk about how hard teaching is.
It's so hard. It is probably the most difficult job to do ever in anything.
And one of them came back and said, why won't they pay attention to me? And I'm like, this is what teachers talk about all the time. And we talked about this, you know, because they have to write lesson plans and things like that. We talked about the lesson plan. Is, you know, are you talking too long? Where did you invite the students to do things? And they all talk. And yes, they talk about that part. And they all talk about watching learning.
Yep.
And so we have a lesson called the moral rewards of teaching. What are the moral rewards that we get? Watching other people learn things feeds us.
Yes, it does.
Having amazing growth producing relationships. I mean, the kids come back and say, this kid, you don't know Anthony, but Anthony is, and like Anthony's 5 and you're 15. And it's these relationships they develop, and it's the feeling of learning that they watch that gets them into the pathway of becoming teachers. And they need to be experiencing that now, I believe. Yep. So when they go to college and college gets hard, I want to do that job. So I need this.
Yeah. And they can kind of see the end result. They know the end result. They know what the prize is at the end, and they know what they need to do to work hard to get to that point. And they know the value of what they're working towards. So I 100% agree with that. Well, I really appreciate you being on the show. We're getting close to the end here, and giving us your insights into the world of literacy, where our nation is in terms of some of those gaps, and providing some useful strategies for how teachers and leaders can be better at helping to close those gaps and get students to be engaged in what they need to be. So I want to thank you for joining us today, all of you listeners, and providing, and Dr. Fisher, I want to thank you for giving us some invaluable insights about how we can better those schools. thoroughly enjoyed today's conversation. And for those of you that are listening on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, comment, share it with your fellow teacher leaders. And until next time, leaders of schools, teachers, keep pushing those boundaries, keep breaking the mold and the status quo, because true change only begins when we dare to defy the ordinary. Thank you so much, Dr. Fisher.
Thank you.
Hey, we all want to scale our business. Hey, I have the answer for you today to help you do that. If you're looking to scale from 5, 6, even 7 figures and beyond, book called Be Good, Be Brief, Be Gone. I'm going to give it to you for free. All you have to do is type in growfast.cash. I say again, growfast.cash, and you can download the book for absolutely free. I hope the book helps you this year. Take your business to the next level. Again, go grab the book, growfast.cash. I say again, growfast.cash. I wish you the best and grow, scale, and win.
Thanks for listening to the Rebel Podcast, Shattering the Status Quo, sponsored by Strategic Advisor Board, with new episodes each week. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode.
There it is. Magnum. Holy moly.
Yeah, baby! That's what I've been waiting for!
Dear God. It's beautiful.